My mission is simple, to help you protect your family and keep more of your money. I'm here to help level the playing field for families and those who seek the truth. There's always a new way to make money, but at the end of the day, it's your family's security and your legacy that matter. And I promise to help you protect what's really important to you. Legacy Money starts now.
All right. Hey guys, it's Barry Page with Legacy Money. So glad you're joining us today. We've got a great program today, and we are live on YouTube and Facebook. So whether or not you're catching us live or you're watching the replay, we appreciate you joining us. I'm joined today by two special guests. These gentlemen are IBC practitioners, and we just were with each other at the Infinite Banking Think Tank in Orlando, Florida, but got to know them a little better, and they are both commercial airline pilots. I'll let them share a little more about what they do and how they help others. But the title of the program today is Creating Tailwinds with Infinite Banking. So, gentlemen, welcome to the program.
Very good to be here. Thank you for the invitation.
Thanks for having us.
Awesome. Well, with this program, the whole thing is to help people live more, give more, and leave more. So I want to learn and let others learn a little more about you. So I guess I'll just start out with you, John, since I've known you a little longer. But John, could you just tell us a little bit about yourself and your family?
Sure, Barry. I have a beautiful wife and 5 grown kids, all who are schooled, by the way, in Infinite Banking. We grew up, we're a military family. I flew a couple tours of combat in the B-52 and found my way into the legacy carriers. And I've been there for 28 years, flown just about everything in the inventory, but it's been a road. And those of us that have been in the airline business long enough have seen the ups and downs, and particularly some of the hard downs. And that's really when I, chose to stand up my business back going all the way to 2008. Don't want to get too far ahead of you here, but that's the family story, real in a nutshell.
Awesome. Well, maybe sometime I'll be able to meet your kids, but I met your beautiful wife, Antoinette, and I know she's your partner in business as well. So it was great seeing her at the think tank. So tell us a little bit about you, Jared Adams. Tell us a little more about you and your background. Jared, are you with us?
There we go. That stinking mute button. We'll figure this out. Hey, thanks for having me, Barry. I really appreciate that. I live south of Atlanta, Georgia, with wife and 3 kids. They're 7, 9, and 11, 3 girls. So I do take prayers. They were often needed with 3 girls in the household. We are very blessed to be south of Atlanta in a great spot. I grew up south of Buffalo, New York, so I know all about the snow and living in it, driving in it, playing in it, and I don't miss that. But what I did take with me is that I'm a diehard Bills fan. That once you take that, that's in your blood forever. So grew up south of Buffalo. That, like I said, with the 20 years up that way, and then the better weather and education brought me to the south, and I never left, never turned back. So I've been in and around Atlanta for about 23, 24 years, and I career-wise, I was also in the I took the civilian path. John took the military path on the aviation road. Mine was a civilian path where I just started off flight instructing and building time. And I ended up doing about 10 years in the regional airlines, flying some of the smaller regional jets. And then was very fortunate to get hired by a major airline in 2014. And it's been quite the ride. I've been very fortunate. A lot of the predecessors before me in aviation saw a lot of those hard knocks. And I've been very fortunate so far, other than a bit of a stagnation there in 2008 when, they stopped hiring at the majors. Other than that, I've been relatively fortunate, just everything kind of trugging along. And I've been able to be an instructor, with with that carrier, as well as flies in the captain seat for that carrier as well. So very fortunate and glad to be here. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, well, thank you for joining us, and I'm so glad to have two pilots here. Our mentor, or at least mine, and I know John was able to spend some time with him as well, but he often spoke. He was a pilot himself, Nelson Nash, I'm referring to, the creator of the infinite banking concept, but he was a pilot, and he often spoke about, headwinds and tailwinds. So we'll get into that here in a little while. But John, so you were in the military, but what made you make that leap to becoming a commercial pilot?
Well, I had put in my commitment into the Air Force. I was active duty, and then I was in the reserves. I actually did some time in KC-135s in Indiana as well. A whole nother story about a lot of other flying that I've done. This isn't about all that, but I had the family business. My dad started a large he started a small agency, built a large agency in the Chicagoland area. And my brother was pretty much took over when my dad had a heart attack and was unable to perform those functions. So I worked for my brother in the family business. And so I was a Series 763 guy. I did all the risk side of asset management for them. It's not something I really had an affinity to. And then I had an opportunity to go and interview with a couple of carriers, and was ultimately offered a job, and there I was at a crossroads. So I went and I did it. I knew aviation. I loved flying airplanes, and so I went and became a commercial airline pilot and worked my way up through the system as Jerry did. We just came from different paths, but he knows exactly what I'm talking about. And I truly have enjoyed it. I really have. But in 2006 through 8, some things happened out there, and I had to spin up to speed, and that's when the genesis of my company began back in 2008. Again, I don't want to get ahead of you, Barry.
Yeah, so if I heard you right, you were actually in the financial services business, and then got into the commercial airlines, and now you're kind of coming back.
Right. Well, it was kind of a kick in the pants, because when that all happened to us, and that were in the aviation space at that time, I was expecting probably 20-25% pay cut, and what happened was it was almost 50%. Pension was taken, benefits were slashed, and here I've got 5 young kids, and I had to figure it out, and so I went back and to what I knew how to do, which was finance. And I built a company from that point up. So I met Nelson later on. It wasn't until 2017 that I met Nelson.
Okay. Wow. Well, that's interesting. I didn't realize you already had a background. So your family was in this business. Is that what?
Very much so. Yeah. They had a very, very big footprint in Chicago. But I was the black sheep of the family, and I went flying airplanes. I wanted to go fly airplanes.
Does that business still exist?
Yes, it does.
Wow.
Yeah.
And that's what you just kind of mentioned to me. Your brother is still in the business then.
Right. He does a lot of private placement work now, Barry, and he's got a very large book of business assets under management, and he's also very strong in the estate planning and the insurance side. So there's still a lot there, but what I'm doing with infinite banking is quite unique. The world that Jared and I live in and are building out is pretty exciting. Same for you, Barry. There's a tremendous amount of need out there for what we're doing.
Oh, absolutely. So if you don't mind, maybe for our listeners or watchers, viewers that aren't familiar with infinite banking, kind of maybe share with us that light bulb moment for you, and just in a nutshell, what you think the average citizen needs to know about infinite banking.
Well, Nelson said, you don't know what you don't know, right? And like so many of us out there, had our eureka moment. I learned about infinite banking kind of through investigation. I was reading and studying, and I want to. How do you become your own banker? And there were some other people in that space out there. Read a bunch of books, and I couldn't get any answers. And I began to call up insurance companies, and I found out who was doing these kinds of contracts, and that led me along a pathway inversely to a discussion with a fellow, John Webster, and he said, "You're talking about infinite banking and Nelson Nash." And I said, "Who's Nelson Nash?" So it was from that I picked up the phone. I called up Nelson, and those that didn't have the privilege to know him, he had a very strong Southern accent. And he said, "Boy," he goes, "you fly airplanes, don't you?" And I said, "Yes, sir, I do." And he goes, "What you doing Tuesday?" And I said, "Nothing." He goes, "Here's what you're going to do. You're going to get on that aeroplane and you're going to come to Birmingham and I'm going to talk to you a little bit." And I said, great. And so I did. I flew to Birmingham and I was met by the man himself. And it was anybody who's ever met Nelson, you wouldn't find a more genuine, more knowledgeable man than Nelson was. And my eureka moment was the transition through that day, and every objection that I had, I was certain I knew my stuff. I was under the arrival syndrome. I knew everything. I didn't know anything. Nelson took me out at the knees very kindly, but I'm all for the data points. And Nelson used data points and facts to completely dismantle what I thought was the reality with financial planning and banking in particular. And the gift he gave me that day to help me understand what is possible is incredible. And so I simply have began applying those principles to myself, my family, my legacy going forward, and ultimately became a practitioner under his program and was certified with he and Carlos and Rob Murphy. And from that point, everything began to grow very nicely. Long-winded answer to a short question, maybe?
No, that is a great story. I didn't even realize that you flew down south to meet him. But you mentioned another colleague who's a frequent guest on the program in our Infinite Banking Conversations, John Webster. So John's a practitioner out west in Arizona. And he frequents the program. So that's awesome. I love that story. So if you don't mind, Jared, could you tell us a little bit about your story and how you were introduced to infinite banking?
Sure. Yeah, the concept itself was handed to me by a State Farm agent. And he said, "You're going to be an airline pilot, right? Your income's going to be as such. You're going to need to protect it. Read this book." And I took it home and I read it. And I tried real hard. I just couldn't make it make sense. Whether it was the cost, whether you look at it from the rate of return, you just I never caught it. I never truly caught it. And so I put the book on the shelf and I moved on with life. And then I guess it was probably 6 years ago, I picked the book back up because I had heard somebody make mention of it. And I said, I've got to prove to myself that I made the right choice 10-ish years ago. I'm going to prove to myself, I'm going to do a deep dive on this, and I'm going to prove to myself that I made the right call. And the more I dug, the more I learned. I had to eat crow. Like, I was totally wrong X years ago when I put that book back on the shelf. It's that same story you hear everybody talk about once they've got their banking system set up. They say, "Man, I wish I would have started 10 years ago." And that is me in a nutshell. But once I caught it and once I understood it, I moved quick. It was time to get going. It was time to make up for lost time. And that was how I met John. Was I used the practitioner finder on the website and found someone nearby. And that was where John and I, that was where our bond started, was he was helping me set up, my infinite banking system. Now, there was some bumps in the road along the way there with some health issues. But the long story short of it was we were able to get some policies set up with my wife as the protected life, and we were able to set up those infinite banking policies for us. So our family is about 2 years into an amazing start to our own infinite banking story. And so kind of a crazy wrap on, having someone hand me that book probably 15 years ago. And then now, here it is, 15 years later, and I'm going down the practitioner path. I was recently accepted into the practitioner program, so I'm not technically a practitioner yet, but I've got to get through the course and take the test. And then when John releases me, I'll be honored to be a practitioner and be in that crowd.
Wow, that's a great story too. You shared your personal story, with me at the think tank this past week. But
Right.
it can be a bumpy ride, right? You guys are pilots, so you understand. Sometimes taking off landing's a little harder than others, but you caught it. You said those are your words, and Nelson would always say, "This is better caught than taught." Right? People have to discover it on their own because. We have these roadblocks, these walls that, certain ways that we've been taught. So if you don't mind, John, since you came from that background, you said, you had all the different licenses, your father literally taught you, your family is in that business of traditional planning. So tell us how you what was that shift like? What since you learned all the other way, and this is literally, I'll say it's 180 degrees. It's somebody brought it. It's definitely not 360, right? We're not doing a circle. We're doing a 180. So tell us, what was that like shifting gears?
Well, it's what Nelson said something to me that was very important about how people focus on their retirement money, and they'll put 10 or 15 or 20% away and try to do as well as they can with that money. There's some of them swinging for the fence, and they ignore the other 80%. And my aha moment with him was with infinite banking, where we look at the whole picture. You look at the totality of all the money that is moving through your hands. When I was working in that old world, man, I was sweating bullets. I'd go home at night, and I was my brother gave me a small portfolio. I was managing $5 million, and I think I did 8% on that money. But I couldn't sleep at night because I was worried about losing people's money. You'd have ups, you'd have downs. There were a couple of because I did derivatives too. I did options contracts. I did futures. I did options, calls, puts, all kinds of ladder techniques, and it was fascinating, and it was very fast-paced. But I was a little bit younger man at the time, and I had a much different time horizon. I thought, hey, you'll always get it back. But one thing that I learned is the most powerful thing we have at our disposal, besides ourselves, is time. And when you take a loss in the market, when they talk about compounding, rates of return, it's uninterrupted compounding interest that makes all the difference. When you're in the markets and you lose 30%, you need 38 or 40% to get whatever the number is to get back to zero. With infinite banking, when you're doing this, it's all a baseline of a loss of nothing. You start every year with a gain because you've got, if nothing else, if you didn't get any dividends, you're still getting the interest component. So you have those guaranteed values. That's the guaranteed part of the contract. And then there's the dividends, which are not guaranteed, of course, but I don't have a single contract that hasn't done as well or better than what I've shown people. And so what I discovered is, oh my gosh, building tax-free inside of one of these contracts at 4, 5, 6% blows away sweating it out at night, trying to make money in the markets. Rather, I can invest in myself. I can invest in businesses and people that I know. There's so many things you can do with money to make money besides giving it to an entity that has no interest, no stake in your future whatsoever. Infinite banking will save your bacon when the chips are down.
I like what you said about invest in yourself. And yeah, that ratio, just real simple numbers. You got $100,000, you lose 50%, right? Well, you have to make 100% to get back to that. Now, it varies with the amount and all of this. And I don't want to, mislead people. These contracts, they don't pay 4 to 6%. It's typically 3 to 4. But with dividends and growth and then other ways that you may invest in yourself and in your business, obviously you can accelerate and that growth can be much, much higher. So,
Sure.
but-
Can I steal one that I heard today over at the Nelson's Nuggets?
oh, sure.
There's an internal rate of return, an external rate of return, and then an eternal rate of return. I'm gonna bang that one into the floorboards. That is absolutely phenomenal. How do you put those? Some of those don't have numbers. You know, when you're putting your stock portfolio together, you can compare those, but how do you put a value on that number, the eternal rate of return?
You really can't. And you know, the title of the show, Legacy Money, and of course Nelson's book that you're referring to is Becoming Your Own Banker. So if you want to learn about what we're talking about, I suggest you get the book. You can find it online. It's Becoming Your Own Banker.
Portfolio there.
What's that?
Oh,
There you
John's
go.
got it.
Yeah. Becoming Your Own Banker by R. Nelson Nash. And you know, that's a nice transition. So both of you are still commercial pilots today as we speak, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And,
yes.
And so you've flown all over the country, all over the world. And now you're in business, you know, kind of as something where you can help others learn about what you've discovered. So, you know, getting into the business a little bit. Now, I want to ask you, Jared, about the Tailwinds here in a minute. But tell me, what was that transition when you decided, John, hey, I'm going to get licensed and get into this business? I mean, what did your family say? And, you know, what was that transition like?
Well, I was licensed back in 2008, so it was long before I met Nelson. But the business model changed dramatically after I met Nelson. So what went into my decision back in 08 was survival. I was selling annuities, Barry. And you hear me okay? Okay.
Yeah, I can hear you fine.
Oh, okay. I was selling annuities. I was just, you know, moving it from the left pocket to the right pocket. You know, that's all I was doing. And it was a very annuities have their place. Trust me, they're an excellent product in the right circumstances. But I wanted to do more. So I absolutely knew annuities. I knew life insurance at the time. I didn't want to get into managing money because I was still flying airplanes at the time. And annuities was a transaction I could do on the road without too much difficulty because I had all the numbers in my head. So, but by the time I got to Nelson, it was what they teach you about life insurance almost isn't important anymore. It's the chassis upon which infinite banking is built is the dividend paying whole life insurance contract from an A-rated company that's paying a dividend for over 100 years. We all stress that. So, you know, getting a license for me was kind of a non-event because that happened in 08. Maybe Jared could address what his family experienced when he went through it.
Oh, I was curious just to how your family took it is what I'm
they thought I was nuts because I had the flagship of the country, and I'm not kidding, in my father's operation, and I went off and flew airplanes. And they're like, what? Why are you getting a license now, practicing? I said, because I'm still flying airplanes. This is just a short-term thing. I had never envisioned where it was going to take me, though. And now my father is gone. He's graduated. My mom has graduated. And my brother is probably going to move out of the business because he's ready to retire too. And I didn't want to take over an assets under management business. That wasn't my shtick. I didn't want to do it.
Yeah, no, that's good. I kind of figured you might have got a little headwind from the family there.
It was all good. We're all very type A maverick personalities in my family. Everybody has cut strides deeply in their own directions, and I just do what I do. Otherwise, I wouldn't meet people like Jared, who's been a tremendous influence on me. He's a smart guy. I'm the pen and paper kind of guy. Jared will show me how to digitalize those thoughts and make them actually work. So he's been an enormous help to me, and I appreciate all his help.
Too kind.
Well, so Jared, that's a nice. Yeah, that's a nice little handoff. So you guys are partners, right? Yep. And you're in business together. So Jared, I mean, what was it? What made you decide, I don't know what other have you had any other jobs other than the pilot job? And what was that like, mid-career or switching into a whole new industry? What was that like?
Well, I was very fortunate because of the base that was the airlines. So Nelson would say that you should be really, really good at two things: your career and banking. And so that one really resonated with me as I caught and learned more about this, the IBC process. And so I was very fortunate to have the undergirding of a great airline career. The crazy part was I had that kind of ripped out from under me about a year ago, through the process of getting one of these policies. They found a health issue, a heart issue that downed me from flying. So as you might notice by the beard that I'm sporting, you're not allowed to sport that when you're flying. Not at least not at the airline I work for. So this is as much of a rebellion against the system as it is anything else. But I am technically right now out on disability from flying. They will not let me go fly right now because of a heart issue that came up. Now, unknown what the origin is, could do speculation all day long. But that issue would not have been found had I not applied for one of these policies, had I not gone through underwriting. I had an abnormal EKG that was showing up on my aviation medical. They weren't worried about it. They said, hey, we're tracking it, not worried about it. Yet you go for one of the policies, they see the same thing. They go, hey, if you want this policy, you're going to go get some more testing. I didn't think I had anything to hide. Perfectly healthy, 42-year-old male, like whatever test you need, let's go do it. And then they uncovered this pretty serious heart issue. So I've been very fortunate to have a great doctor team that's, able to get it going in the right direction, but I'm still not back to flying technically. And man, you go back to that story from prior. Had I started a policy 15 years ago when I first heard about this, I'd have all kinds of tailwinds that would have been created already for me. And now here I am, with a great base, but man, we've got to ebb and flow with the punches that are thrown your way. And is it Mike Tyson? You never know how good your plan is until you get hit in the face, or what? I think I screwed up that quote.
That's close enough. I think we'll get it. But man, I love that story. And of course you shared it to me, with me a little bit already, but I tell clients all the time, you can't get your feelings hurt. As a matter of fact, you might find out something that you would have never known, as you did, about your health. So it's a good thing, right? And you were already kind of convinced about the idea, but now you're in business, right? So you guys are in business together. Your business is flightpathfinancial.com is your website. I mean, after you discovered IBC and you went through, I guess, the underwriting, and you found out now you're disabled. Is that why you decided to get licensed, or was it something else? Was it just the fact that you could help others, or you were looking for something else to do?
That you said it spot on. I was already looking towards going down this path of helping others regardless. Once I caught it and once I got it, I've always been a guy that's understood numbers real well in terms of finance, but it was kind of crazy that I didn't catch this off the start. But once I did, it was like, man, I just want to bring this to the masses. Like, why don't other people understand this? It made so much sense in my head. So it didn't matter to me whether it was going to be a small side job or a side gig, or whether it was going to be a full-time quit flying. I knew I would be involved in it somehow, some way, because of the stability that it brought to my family and just how much sense it made. So I knew I'd be involved with it. And I've just been kind of, I don't want to say winging it, because I haven't been winging it on the training piece of it, but I've been winging it on what opportunities come our way. Meeting John was an absolute godsend to be able to, have a mentor like that in the practitioner world. John's been amazing. He's been a great resource, and I've really learned a lot from him. So, when it comes to, what did this look like? It got kicked from a small little side fun into it's time to go make this full time. And that's kind of what it's turned into for me. So really excited that it is able to help people as it has. I've got, folks that I've already been able to help, and I'm excited to help folks moving forward.
Yeah, well, as you were speaking, I brought up a slide here, and that's kind of a nice transition. So for people maybe that, even for pilots, obviously, but relating it as a pilot, uh, tell us a little bit about this headwind and tailwind that most people face. And I thought I was going to be able to bring your picture up there, so I'll toy with that as you're talking. But we have an airplane here. Can you just maybe talk a little bit about that?
Sure. Well, I would be remiss if I didn't at least first say that this small Piper aircraft, that's a sharp looking aircraft, would never ever hit 300 miles per hour. It would. We've got to. If there's any aviators that listen to us, they're going to be like, "No,
They're going to be, hey, that won't work.
Not a chance." So we're
It's an analogy. See, from a non-pilot, okay.
So we're already disclaimering that these numbers aren't accurate to the picture shown, yet the concepts still matter. So the idea here is that if the aircraft is traveling at 300 miles per hour, hypothetically, and you were going to fight up against a tailwind, so a tailwind is going to increase your speed where a headwind is going to decrease your speed. So if you've got a 100-knot headwind, your actual movement across the ground is 200 miles an hour. Imagine a kite that's flying in the air. It has air that's moving over the kite. It has to, because that's the only way that it's staying afloat. But it's not going anywhere, and it's not just because the string is holding it back. It's because it's got as much headwind as it does tailwind. So, here's your concept of if you're cruising along at 300 miles an hour with 100 mile an hour headwind, what's your actual ground speed? It's 200 miles an hour.
So relate that to money. I mean, what are some of the headwinds that we face out there that we may not even recognize, right?
That's fair. Yeah, that's a really good question. I relate headwinds to, the money that you don't even know you're spending in the banking function. A lot of folks think, a lot of folks that we work with, they're like, the only debt I have is a mortgage. It's the only one I carry. Okay, great. Have you looked at how much you spend in mortgage interest in the first 5 years? It's percentage wise getting crushed. God forbid if someone's got to carry debt, credit card debt, or maybe, just the various ways that you may accrue debt throughout your career. Nelson would say you spend 34.5% of every dollar on interest. And that's not because your mortgage is 34.5% interest. It's looking at all the funds that are going in and all the funds that are going out and how much of that is going to interest. It's not always the percentage rate, it's the volume. So if you were to take all of that money you're paying in interest and give it to the banker, that's your headwind. If that's the best way I can put it. How else would you describe it?
Well, that absolutely, but we've even got other headwinds, right, John? What about inflation? Now, you just talked about credit card interest rates going up. So along with the cost of our goods going up, the interest rates have gone up, right?
Yeah,
And we call inflation the stealth tax. So how about taxes, John? Have you paid some taxes over your lifetime?
Unfortunately, I've paid my more than fair share of taxes, Barry, because I couldn't find a better way of getting out from under it until I found this.
So we face lots of headwinds, and just if you add those together, the 34 cents you discussed in Nelson's book that the average American spends on interest, whether or not they realize it or not, of every dollar. But we also spend, anywhere between 20 and 50% on taxes, whether it be income taxes, state, federal, or all the other taxes that we have to pay, right?
Right.
And then, of course, I alluded to the stealth tax, which is inflation, which I think everybody has a little bit better understanding of how inflation can affect our pocketbook just in the recent years. So those are the headwinds, all right? And, they're hitting us, and it's slowing us down. And they can be much larger than that percentage there, right? So instead of going to 300, as you noted, we're only going 200. So maybe let's take it just a step further and talk about, what can happen if you have a tailwind. and maybe you eliminate some of those headwinds. So can you further discuss that, Jared?
Yeah, absolutely. So, how do you create those tailwinds? So, you create those tailwinds by taking over the banking function. You create those tailwinds by, creating a passive income. Passive income is your money working for you with you not doing anything. So you've got those options. You're also creating tailwinds by building your warehouse of wealth, by being able to store your money in a place that's safe and liquid. And then you've also got, the tax-free wealth transfer. Those to me all seem like great tailwinds. That which one of those matter the most to you, or do they all matter? Because for me, they all matter. And each one of those is very, very personal to me in how I manage those and what that looks like for our family. But thank goodness I met John, that he was able to, kind of walk me through and talk me through what that looks like, to then be able to apply those tailwinds to our family.
That's a great explanation. And what I want people to, actually grasp with this is, Nelson would always say, you can't fly in a vacuum, right? Those things are out there, but some of them we can change. We can maybe remove some of those headwinds by not paying interest to others and literally creating our own private system for finance, right? So we can recover some of those costs. Maybe we don't have taxable assets coming later. And John, you can, talk maybe a little more about this, since, most people have qualified plans where they're deferring taxes to the future. But what if you could just eliminate them, right? So in this graphic here, you'll notice that, okay, so 200 miles per hour after the 100 mile per hour headwind. But then if you got rid of that and you just got a tailwind, right? I mean, you're literally doubling your return, as everybody likes to do, right? They always want to talk about the return that they're getting on their money. But what we've done in this scenario is gone from 200 mile an hour to 400 mile an hour. So that's literally, with the headwinds, it could be a 600 mile an hour difference in that scenario. And I learned about this firsthand investing in real estate, because in 1 month I'm collecting rent, right? And I have that passive income that you were talking about, or additional cash flow at this point. It wasn't truly passive because I was still working. But 1 month I had that. The next month we had a hurricane. So I was going backwards. I was bleeding money, right? That's a huge difference. So in this scenario, we're talking about reversing that, getting rid of the headwind, or at least decreasing it as much as possible. So, John, do you have anything further to say about that?
Well, I can give you an example if you'd like. It kind of brings substance to the people out there kind of listening, how this applies to them and how infinite banking, where the rubber meets the road. Excuse me, a few years back, we had a terrible hailstorm here in Georgia. My roof was pelted. I've got a big roof. And it was going to be close to $30,000 to replace that roof. I have coverage. Unfortunately, pick your property casualty company well. I did not. And they had denied the claim, even though 3 roofers said that you needed a new roof. And so as I was going back and forth fighting with them to try to get them to replace the roof, we were getting a ton of rain. And I was beginning to get leaks inside the house. It was damaging inside the house. And I said, I'm done with this. I'll just go ahead and replace it myself and continue to fight them. So in order to do that, most people don't carry $30,000 sitting in their pocket. I went to my contract. I pulled the money out, and I think it was 5% rate on the money. And they were offering through a third party to do the financing for me, but it was at 12%. So when you talk about, you're only getting 2 or 3 or 4% on the tax-free rate of return inside a contract, it's one whale of a lot more than that, because you got to use the money. That's the whole thing. You don't want to just sit and have it idle. You don't have the best target rifle in the country and go to the range and leave it in the case. You go and you demonstrate proficiency and you beat everybody at twice the distance. So what I'm saying is that the amount of money that I saved by having Nelson's plan in my back pocket where I could go to my contract, pull that money out, stroke a check, get them paid off, and then I accelerated the payments. I gave myself, I don't know, I think I put 16 or 18 months is what it took me to pay it off. But I just set up my own amortization schedule. That saved me thousands and thousands of dollars. I did the same thing with a car. I bought a car, 9.1%. I'm not going to keep that. It was over the duration of the loan. It would have been a lot, thousands of dollars of interest gone. So it's not it's the facility. It's being able to use that money at a much more advantageous rate. And what's happening to that money? It's flowing through your hands, and you capitalize your warehouse of wealth, your bank, by the money that you control, not some third party entity who could care less about you. So that's a long-winded example.
Well, so John, you didn't tell. Was it the wind that caused the rain to come in your house?
That's it. Okay. All right. So here's
so you forget. I live here where Hurricane Katrina hit, right? And so that was the big argument. And try with multiple properties, right? When you have many rental properties,
yes,
and you're trying to roofs on all the houses. So the wind, the rain, and so all the policies were canceled. You have to argue with the insurance company, wait months and years. But what you're talking about is you borrowed funds from your IBC policy, your contract.
Yes.
You borrowed against it to get the roof on quickly, to save on interest, and to recover the money.
Yes.
You repaid the loan.
Exactly right? That's exactly right. I used it as a credit facility, my own credit facility, not the bank's, and capitalize. You can't be afraid to capitalize. That's the big thing. Nelson says it doesn't do you any good to have a small amount of capitalization in there. You got to feed this thing, because the bigger it is, the more powerful you become as a banker. And so you want to capitalize, and don't be afraid to capitalize. It's your money sitting there, whether it's sitting there in the Bank of Main Street. What does it matter? It matters a lot to you if it's your bank, because now you control who gets that money, when they get it, and what interest rate you're going to pay it back with. And I would recommend, as Nelson would say, pay double the current rate. Accelerate the capitalization of your contract.
Awesome.
Well,
that's a great story, and I love hearing it from actual pilots. That's fantastic. Jared, tell us. I mean, what do you think more pilots need to learn about this? I mean, don't most pilots, commercial pilots anyway, have pretty good retirement plans? Why should a pilot, or anyone for that matter, but specifically, why should a pilot want to learn more about this?
I mean, I don't think it's just pilots, Barry. I think anybody would be attracted to this. That's one of the cool things about the way that Nelson had discovered this and found this. You could be a small, living in the country, making maybe $40,000 a year family, and this still works for you. Or maybe you're making $1 million a year. You still make it work for you. You're still setting up the policy. It's just how many zeros are behind it. It doesn't matter what the basis is. It really does work for everybody. Specifically about pilots, they're very fortunate, at least the way a lot of them are set up now. There's already funds that are going towards a portion of their retirement that are company contributed. They don't have to give a single dime, and they've got additional that they can give. Now, we all know that there's a lot of folks that give their share and some, whether it's through the traditional 401 or Roth 401, and then take it even further to go into an IRA that they're going to backdoor into a Roth. All of these funds, I mean, we're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars, and then after a course of a lifetime, millions of dollars. All of these funds that they haven't had a single ounce of control over through their entire career. What happens if you capture some of the control on where it goes, how it goes, what it's earning, where you can use it? So it's really, I think the pilots are in a niche position that they've got an amazing amount of wealth that is crossing their hands, and really it's their choice on what they get to do with it. And I wouldn't down anybody that doesn't. Finance is very emotional. It's very personal. I would never throw darts. Like, this is a very personal thing. But man, if you dig in and don't wait 15 years like I did, Get in and do your research, see if it's right for you, see if it fits. And then once you realize the power within this system, move on it, act on it. And it doesn't even have to be, a ton. We don't have to, you don't have to give $1 million a year. Give something that's meaningful and manageable, and watch it grow and watch the power that is in your hands.
Awesome. Well, that's a good explanation. So John, just kind of to wrap up here a little bit. So you guys are in business together, and you people is the best place to get a hold of you through flightpathfinancial.com if somebody wants to learn more.
Sure. They can go there, or they can email us at info@flightpathfinancial.com. And we've also got Creating Tailwinds out there, which I know is, we've got some issues out there with some cross-pollination, but we're on Spotify, we're on Apple.
But they can get that. They can get that through your website.
They can. Thank you. Yes, they can.
Way, without getting.
And I'm writing a book, and so that's going to be coming out too. But I'm not ready with that one yet.
All right. So, if you don't mind, just kind of in closing, then if you could share with us, really, John, because you have a very unique background in that your family was in this business. You got into another career, and then you kind of came back to an alternative side. But would you just kind of tell us a little bit about, where you see yourself, your long-term goals, the first rule of IBC, actually. So could you tell us maybe where you see yourself, with your business and 5, 10, 20 years and your family, going into your legacy in the next generation?
Well, I'm all in with infinite banking, Barry. I went through, we talked a little bit about it. I don't want to go back down that sidetrack, but we went through some tough times in the airline business. And I put my wife and I put our kids first. And so when other people were saving, we were spending like crazy. You got 5 kids. Kids are expensive. And for the airline pilots out there, just tapping into what Jared was saying earlier, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when you're going to see a downturn. You're going to roll back from the captain seat to the right seat. You're going to we had a B scale at one point. You could get furloughed. Worst case, your company goes under. The airline business is hugely, hugely susceptible to business economic cycles. Mises talks about this, the Austrians. We're going to see another downturn. It's going to happen. If you're smart, you're going to pack your money now into these contracts so that when the tough times do come, you're in a position to do something about it. Transitioning back to myself, my whole battle plan is I don't put any money into my 401k. And there's a whole reason I don't do it, because the commutative property of multiplication, which we could talk about another time, but I can do far better putting that money to work where I control where it goes. And so ultimate, yes, 5, 10, 15, 30 years down the road, I'm going to build a legacy for my family. And as I'm building that legacy, I'm using those funds for the things of life, the new roof, tuition, the car, whatever it is.
How hard was it for you to get that first loan against your policy?
Piece of cake. I've had them money in my account anywhere from 3 business days to 7 business days. That's about what it's taken me.
And you don't have any, Nelson would call it Mickey Mouse paperwork. Is there a lot of things hoops you got to jump through? What was it like in comparison to getting a loan, with anyone else financing you've done?
The simplest thing you'll ever do, as you know, Barry, you go online, you set up a portal for yourself. You go to the insurance company's website and you say, ticket in, send me the money. And there's 2 forms you fill out. One's money flowing in, one's money flowing out. And the money flowing out is for your loans. And that money goes out from ACAT transfer right into your account, and it'll be there in a matter of a couple business days. Very, very simple. It's keystrokes away versus going to a bank. Please give me the money. We'll put you before the board, the review committee, and see if you're good enough, if you qualify, if your credit score is good enough. And then what about this? And they want all kinds of documentations that is none of their business. So it's very private, very quick, and you will, trust me, you'll like it so much. If you have never done it, you'll wonder why you ever dealt with a Main Street bank before. You should have done this 20 years ago. That's been my experience.
Awesome. Well, I don't know. Do you have anything else you want to add to that, Jared? How did you where should people go? The Infinite Banking think tank is where we met. Is it the Nelson Nash Institute? Would you recommend people go there?
Absolutely. Even if you've never, thought about getting a policy or never even heard about infinite banking, you're in the hub right there. You're at the center of all, and of all knowledge too. Like there are so many people that I met this last week that were just cool, calm, and collected, just willing to talk with you, willing to share what their story was, or what their IBC testimony might have been. Like, just absolutely amazing. Really, really cool community. That's the other thing that I can take away from only being in the infinite banking world for a couple of years is it's really an amazing giving community. And to kind of circle back to one of the questions that you already answered, where do you see yourself? I don't know what time I've got left on this earth. I hope it's a long time, but I know that what I'm going to create will pass on to my wife, if she's still alive, my 3 daughters, and they're going to be schooled on this as well, so that their kids and their kids know what it was like to save and how important that is to pass along that generational wealth. And that doesn't just show up, we didn't create that in 1 year, so we don't give it in 1 year. These are years and decades worth of savings and good teaching and positive thought that goes along with the proper way to manage your money. And so that's one of the other things I know that I will pass along is that knowledge to the girls. And then wherever they go with it, it'll be really interesting to know where that went. But I won't be here to see it.
You might.
Well, yeah.
You may.
We never know, right? We never know when we'll be called to come home, graduate, as Nelson said, would say. And I do really appreciate your time today, guys, and for joining me here. If you want to learn more about infinite banking, I have lots of other videos on the infinite banking concept on this channel. So be sure to subscribe to Legacy Money on YouTube. But if somebody is looking to meet with a practitioner, wherever you're located, you can always go to the infinitebanking.org website. But the primary thing I think that we want you to know, if you're looking at infinite banking, is that there are a lot, shall we say, of imposters out there, right? So what you want to, and I'm not sure why that's showing up. Lots of airplanes. There you go. So this is what you want to look for is the infinite banking concept practitioner. Just ask them. If somebody's telling you they're doing infinite banking, make sure you find out if they are practitioners, because there's extra training, lots of education that go into this. And perhaps that's why many other agents, advisors don't get involved. But I know that was your experience, Jared, meeting with John. Would you recommend that, John, Jared?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And Barry, for the listening audience out there, if you're not going to find a finer guy than Barry Page out there. So definitely, he's being gracious and giving us airtime here. Make sure you knock on his door, because he is a wealth of information. If I have a question, I'll go talk to Barry.
Well said. Yeah, the practitioner piece is huge. Without knocking any specific policies or specific attributes, you'll hear someone and you'll say, however the conversation leads, you end up talking about infinite banking a little bit, and you're like, oh, tell me a little bit about your setup. How did that work for you? And then you see some of the numbers as you peel the layers back a little, and you're like, I didn't even have to ask. I know they didn't work with a practitioner.
Right.
And so I don't want to throw salt in the wound, and I don't want to bring that up. They're already investing down a path that they think is going to work for them. So I just kind of let that one humbly go into the woodwork. But it's hard to see, because you know what it's supposed to look like, and you know what potential this has. So I guess just like anything, there's always going to be bad actors. You can't stop that. But if you look for this sign, if you look to make sure you're working with an infinite banking practitioner, you're guaranteed to win.
The gold seal.
That's great. And I appreciate you sharing all that and your kind words. When you get to the infinitebanking.org website, there will be a practitioner finder. So you can look for somebody in your locale. Many agents are licensed in different states, as I am, and these guys are. So just find someone you're comfortable talking to and working with, and they'll be able to help you. But we just want to thank you for joining us today, guys. I look forward to talking more with you and working with you. So thanks again for joining us, and we'll see you in the next video.
Thanks, Barry.
Awesome.
Thanks for having us. I'll be looking for that. I'll be looking for that piper that can go 300 miles an hour. I'm going to keep searching.
Find me one too. I'll let you fly. Thanks a lot,
Thank you
guys.
very much, Barry.
Take care, guys.
Appreciate
Thanks, Barry.
it.
Cheers.
Cheers.